Hello, Catherine here, and I'm going to show you how to cut out a shape from a Linoblock. So what do I mean by that? So right here I have a partially cut image on a piece of battleship linoleum, and my goal is to create a reductive woodcut or lino cut of this image based off of this little flamingo drink holder. And so far, what I have done is I have, carved out the negative space in between the beak and the neck that I want to print white. But what I'd like to do is actually have this as a free-floating stamp rather than inking up and printing this whole block. So I am trying to remove these parts of the negative shape. So there's a couple ways to do that. Battleship linoleum is relatively thin and is kind of mounted on this burlap mesh. And so it's once you carve it down a little bit, it makes it a little bit easier. And if you cut away enough, you can use an x-acto knife or scissors to cut away. So the first one, I'll do like maybe this top corner using scissors. So I've went ahead and I outlined my entire figure, so to speak, the flamingo, with a couple of V-gouges or the knife. And I've kind of gone over these parts multiple times, trying to be careful of any kind of smooth bumps. So I kind of go out and around so that I don't like lob off the curves of any of the like smaller curves. And I kind of did this all the way around. Now, for scissors you don't have a ton of control, so I always kind of clear out the area first if I want to use scissors. So maybe out from this line, I use a big U-gouge. There's also other kind of clearing gouges you can use, like with the linoleum cutters by Speedball. You can kind of use that largest U-gouge and kind of push out. So after I kind of clear this, this has made that linoleum much thinner. So it's a little bit easier for me to come in with some scissors. Okay. All right, let's see. So here, it's still a little thick. I recommend maybe going over each area twice. But even now, just going over that area once, I'm able to cut that with a pair of scissors. Now with that angle, I don't kind of want to cut out from there. I might want to like find a way to cut in. So I might flip this around. And if you have a trouble point like that, you can go ahead and like kind of trim that off. And so long as, so you can cut a little bit further away. And if you still had some connected to here, you can kind of just kind of smooth that out with these. So, and maybe I'll come back over here. There we go. So that's with scissors. That's how I would clear it with scissors. So now I might try this next corner using the x-acto knife method. This way you don't have to clear out everything, but you should be comfortable using an x-acto knife before you do this. Now remember, X-acto knives are a tool where you pull towards yourself. So you always want to have your hand above where you're cutting, kind of like so. So maybe, or at least beside it. So I've already kind of pre-cut a lot of this with an X-acto knife. So one safety tip is you might not want to cut through the whole thing all at once, especially if it's not very deep, so maybe a few shallow cuts at a time. So let's see. So it might take about 2 to 4 or 6 kind of cuts. Of course, if you had gone in there beforehand and cut a little bit deeper, that probably would have saved you some time with the X-acto knife. But as you can see, this starts to remove that. Here we go. Might go back over everything once more. So, sometimes I like to hit things from different angles, so feel free to rotate your block. So yeah. I'm also using a dull X-acto knife, so try to use a sharp one. I'm just using what I had on hand, so you can kind of see that the tip of this is like square. So I recommend using a fresh X-acto knife blade if you have them on hand. But as you can see, it's starting to come off. Let's see. This little nub is a little harder. One thing I didn't note is that I am using a self-healing mat underneath. You never really want to do this right on top of like a surface that you don't want to get scratched up with. So I use a self-healing mat. If you do not have a self-healing mat, sometimes, oops, I might cut something on a carpet, or although you have to be careful with that too, or on top of scrap cardboard, old cereal boxes, the back of sketchbooks often might have like a kind of single ply board, so sometimes I use that. So you can kind of bend it back a little bit. So if you cut far enough through where it's like this, you can kind of go in with your X-acto knife from the back and cut through that burlap carefully. Make sure your fingers aren't on the other side. Or you can kind of do that from either side. Voila! So that's not the entire flamingo, but that kind of gives you an idea of kind of 2 ways you can start to remove the sides of a lino block. I might come back into this and clean it up with my X-acto knife. So